we're sure you came in here bleeding a little bit of red, white, and blue, but we are going to dose you with a little bit of green. Those principles work every time they're tried, but we have to put those principles in place.
In the United States of America, and you're part of it. You're Americans. They were fishing on a frozen lake. How addicted to fishing do you have to be?
And he said, I will fight for you.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
If you want to have the blessings of liberty, you got to have that frequent recurrence to fundamental principles.
Now, as horrific as this killing was, the fact is it could have been worse. That in itself is a terrible thought. The 26 people could have been even more. One of the reasons it was not more was the heroism of one of the individuals standing with me right now.
John, please welcome Stephen Milford.
I was looking at, and I knew it, I was looking at a man coming at me with Class 3 body armor. I was aiming center mass. I was just trying to take him down. Just can't understand it, but you know, because you look at our history, why America is exceptional. I had 2 rounds left, and as far as I know, at the end of this chase, there's going to be another gunfight, and he still got on Class 3 body armor.
One shot, now the future is yours. Go! I'm turning dreams into reality. In the lab with the formula in chemistry. The memories spark and motivate and make the industry shake. We put the balls in the brakes. I'm talking one chance at best, yes. Painting pictures for the culture, keep the brushes fresh. Flip the cover, work the drummer, passion never rests. Freedom is our teacher under pressure, now we blessed. See, I was so good for the goal. There's one art, one shot, now the future is yours. Go! Yeah. It's one art, one shot, now the future is yours. Go!
My name's Aaron Marshall, and I attended the inaugural Veteran Patriot Academy track in 2017. So to me, a patriot is someone who loves their country, but not just a blind loyalty. It's someone who truly wants the best for their country. When I came to the Veterans Academy the first time, it was an excellent growing experience. I was very impressed with the breadth of skills the Patriot Academy covered not just the legislative process, but from my perspective, strove to make you a well-rounded person, giving you a variety of skills that are useful not just in politics, but in life in general. So one example of a way that I was able to practically apply what I learned at Patriot Academy was to come back during the Texas legislative session in 2019 and testify against gun control bills that were being introduced in the Texas legislature. And having the knowledge of how the legislative process worked gave me a level of comfort to be able to step into that role seamlessly. I would say that an average Joe is looking out for themselves primarily, whereas a patriot is someone who is looking out for the betterment of their community and their country. They're self-sacrificial. They are someone who is not primarily concerned with their own interests, but also the interests of others.
Hey friends, Rick Green with today's Constitutional Minute. I'm actually going to be taking our Constitutional Minute today right out of the Founders Bible. If you don't have one of these, I strongly encourage you to get one. It's a phenomenal tool. David Barton, I think, probably his most important thing that he's ever put out. And there's something about reading God's Word and inserted into that are articles where you get the founder's perspective on that particular scripture. It's really powerful. In this case, it's actually something I was reading just this morning. We're actually in studio for doing some other Constitutional Minutes. I said, we got to stay over for one more because of what I read this morning in the Founder's Bible. It's a quote from Sam Adams, and this is so powerful. Sam Adams, known as the father of the American Revolution, a very important founding father. And here's what he said. But as you hear these words, think about them in today's generation, not just his generation. I think it's applicable to us today. Here's what he said. The liberties of our country, the freedom of our civil constitution are worth defending at all hazards, and it is our duty to defend them against all attacks. We've received them as a fair inheritance from our worthy ancestors. They purchased them for us with toil and danger and expense of treasure and blood and transmitted them to us with care and diligence. It will bring an everlasting mark of infamy on the present generation, enlightened as it is, if we should suffer them to be wrested from us by violence without a struggle, or to be cheated out of them by the schemes of false and designing men. Friends, he basically just said, we have been given the torch of freedom. Actually in our case, multiple previous generations paid the price to preserve that torch. And then they pass it to us. It's the inheritance that we've been given from those who came before us. And it is our duty, our responsibility to preserve and protect it. What did he call it? He said that the freedom of our civil constitution, our Constitution. If there's anything I could say in a constitutional minute that's important, is that the Constitution must be defended by you and by me. And that's what Sam Adams just said. He said, if we allow those freedoms to be basically, taken away from us through schemes of politicians today, without even using violence, by passing laws and changing the culture in a way that can take away your freedoms, that we should be embarrassed, that it'll be a horrible mark on us, that we'll be handing a torch to the next generation that's not even lit, that freedom will have been gone. Folks, we have a duty and responsibility. Thank you, Sam Adams, for speaking to us today from the grave, all these generations later, and reminding us of the price that he and his generation paid for freedom, that so many generations before us paid, and that we have a responsibility to preserve and protect it. Friends, I encourage you, visit wallbuilders.com today. Get you a Founder's Bible. You will so enjoy reading God's Word and learning from the Founding Fathers at the exact same time. I'm Rick Green. Thanks for joining me today on today's Constitutional Minute.
Just about the time you think you understand everything about our history, an opportunity like this comes by.
You can look at pictures, you can read stories, but seeing these places in person is a very emotional experience.
Having Rick bring everything that we experienced to life was amazingly impactful, and I'm getting chills just talking about it right now.
Unless you're the individual that is actually here, you won't have the same feeling when someone tells you what it is that they experienced.
I'd say the most impactful part internally for me was at Independence Hall, being able to actually sign the Declaration of Independence, to put myself in the signer's shoes, to really think about what they were truly pledging when they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors, and to sit there and now say, now I am pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor.
Hey friends, this is Rick Green with today's Constitutional Minute. This is going to be a quick one, hopefully. I just want to answer this question about whether or not the president can use the military to stop violence across the nation. I'm getting tons of requests on this, and look, let's just lay it out. First of all, let's get to the specific constitutional clauses and federal statutes that apply to this, and then let's take a very quick look at history and the use of this, and you can decide for yourself, is the president right or wrong in saying he can use the military if our governors don't start protecting the peace in our state? So look, there are two parts to the Constitution that deal with this. Article 4, Section 4, that's what we call the Guarantee Clause. It includes the Invasion Clause and the Protection Clause. Here's what it says. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion, and on application of the legislature or the executive, when the legislature cannot be convened, against domestic violence. Now, that's Article 4, Section 4, and clearly you got to have a request from the state for the federal government to step in. But then there's Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 15. It's known as the Militia Clause. Some call it the Calling Forth Clause. It says this: the Congress shall have power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. Now look, bottom line is you take both of those two clauses together, and when there is an insurrection, the federal government not only can use the military to stop the violence, the Constitution requires the federal government to do so. So that begs the next question: who makes the call? Now, Article 1, Section 8 gives that call to the Congress, not the president. However, Congress has delegated that power to the president all the way back to 1792. We've passed several different pieces of legislation that we call the Insurrection Acts. The first one was in 1792. It was known as the Calling Forth Act. And first of all, let's just put that in the context of time. When was that done? 1792. Who's in Congress? Well, in fact, it's framers of the Constitution, signers of the Declaration of Independence. A huge chunk, in fact, half the Senate at the time and a big chunk of the House were signers of the Declaration and framers of the Constitution. So these were the folks that gave us the founding documents. And guess who was president? George Washington. So, in fact, not only did George Washington sign that legislation, he actually used the Insurrection Act just 2 years later to put down the Whiskey Rebellion, which there's a whole story in that feels similar in some ways in terms of numbers and riots and that kind of stuff. But at any rate, the President of the United States, our first president, the father of the country, the president of the Constitutional Convention, he used the Insurrection Act to put down violence whenever it was coming from these kind of insurrections. Now, here's the historical use. So he was the first one to do it, but it's been used more than 20 times by a dozen different presidents of various political parties, including, by the way, this should not be forgotten, roughly 1/3 of all uses of the Insurrection Act was by just two Democrat presidents, John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Baines Johnson. It was used by Republican Dwight Eisenhower to protect the 9 black school children in Little Rock from racist Democrats. It was used by John F. Kennedy at the Ole Miss riot in 1962 and also used to stop racist Democrats from standing in the schoolhouse door. It was used by Woodrow Wilson, by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, by Kennedy, by Johnson, and by the first George Bush to put down riots just like what we're seeing right now. Now do the math. That's 4 Democrats and 1 Republican. But somehow the media and Secretary Esper and Mattis, they think it shouldn't be used now. We're in the worst riot situation in our history. It's in every state. It's across the board. You know, perhaps like Abraham Lincoln, President Trump needs to just keep firing generals until he finds an effective one that can stop our cities from burning. This is not even a close call. Based on historical precedent and on basic constitutional law, there is absolutely zero doubt, no debate necessary. The President of the United States is 100% constitutionally authorized and justified and, frankly, responsible to use the U.S. military to stop the destruction of our cities. I'm Rick Green. This has been today's Constitutional Minute.
Well, talk to me about why you want to do this.
I mean, I believe in the culture of people that believe in freedom, liberty. It always came with the ability to defend yourself and defend the innocent. So obviously, you know I believe in the concept. Yeah. You know I believe in the Second Amendment. I am a carry permit holder in Tennessee. I mean, if you're going to carry a gun around that you might have to shoot somebody, you better frickin' know what you're doing.
Oh, is that my shot? Perfect?
I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're military. This will change everything. It is beautiful. But it'll beat you up. First time I didn't hit anything, but I had fun. because I shot an Uzi.
You are placed into a moment where everything that you've been doing this for is put to the test.
You know, you're hearing it everywhere. It's around us at a depth and velocity like we've never seen in our lifetime. It's literally taking people down a spiral of destruction, and it's what we call deception. Just take a look around. Look at the young people in your life. Look at the people all around you where deception is after them with a vengeance. You know, we have a responsibility as parents, grandparents, pastors, educators, mentors, and coaches. We can feel the urgency now more than ever. It's an urgency to inoculate this next generation against those same old ideas that have led to bondage throughout the course of history every time they've been tried. And we got to ask ourselves, do our sons and daughters know how to detect the lies in the culture? Do they know how to apply timeless, life-giving standards of truth rooted in the gospel to the problems of today? Are they ready to step out in courage when it's their turn, their chance to influence and lead a generation away from bad ideas with dangerous consequences? The real question is, has their education prepared them for this reality? Look, if you're between the ages of 16 and 25 and you're within the sound of my voice, this message is for you. No matter your personality, what your passions are, or the station of life or career you find yourselves in, the fight has come to you. The preparation you need does not happen by accident. It takes purposeful sharpening, role play, and intentionality to train for battle. And that's where Patriot Academy comes in. It's not a summer camp, it's a boot camp. Patriot Academies take place in state capitals across the nation throughout the summer, and we teach you essential communication skills and how to assess the ideas around you, but through a lens we call the LIFT principles. That's limited government, individual liberties, the free enterprise market system that rejects dangerous ideas like socialism and communism, and then lastly, it's timeless principles of truth. Our 3-day boot camp is just the beginning of a lifelong journey of learning on how to influence and take action to advance freedom no matter where God leads you. Because of the connections you'll make, you're going to have full access to a network of leaders who stand ready to engage the culture and stand with courage with you. Make the decision today. Be the influencer that God has destined you to be. Be that one person who's equipped, strategically placed, and takes action.
So welcome to the fire. I'm the one with the lighter. Feel it burning through your veins as we're walking through the flames, getting higher. So welcome to the fire. Welcome to the fire. Feel it burning through your veins as we're walking through the flames, getting higher. So welcome to the fire.
Defund the police, abandoning police stations. We have riot zones in Seattle now and in cities across the country. Our nation is literally allowing its cities to be burned. We got rioters that are attacking innocent people. I watched a husband the other day have to helplessly beg for the life of his wife as she's being beat to a pulp with a 2x4. This is the chaos that's happening in our nation right now. Listen, if you are not trained to defend your family, now is the time. You can't put this off any longer. You have got to get ready to defend your family. I pray all this stuff ends tomorrow. I don't think that's going to happen. And there's some places in our country where it might just get worse. So you better be prepared. Listen, this is a calling on all fathers to be prepared to defend their children and their spouses. Not just the men, the women need to be prepared as well. And this isn't just because of the rioting. This is a requirement, a responsibility of a free people. James Wilson, signer of the Constitution and the Declaration, said, you get robbed in your own home, it's your own fault and negligence. Listen, we have relied too heavily upon the government to protect us. And I'm a back the blue guy. I think it's an absolute abomination what's happening right now to our policemen across the country. You know, because of bad actions of a few individuals. One that's been obviously, you know, we all agreed, 100% of the country agreed was wrong. But for us to now take the hundreds of thousands of good cops across this country and allow people to literally spew vile, vulgar things in their faces and spit on them and do the things that are happening across the country, I'm embarrassed as a nation that we're allowing this lawlessness to take place. But my concern for you right now is that you get prepared to defend your family. You have got to go to Front Sight with us. You have got to take a handgun defense course so that you know how to properly use a firearm. It's not enough to go buy a firearm. I realize sales are through the roof right now. It's not enough to go buy a gun and ammunition, stick it in the car or in your pocket or whatever you might be doing right now and think that you're ready to defend your family. You're not. I had a handgun license to carry my weapon for 15 years and didn't carry because I was afraid. I didn't know how to handle it, even though I'd grown up shooting. I didn't know how to properly defend my family in a situation. But now, after going out to Front Sight and getting training after training after training, we are very well prepared. And you need to feel that same confidence. You need to have that ability to respond in the moment and to have already made the mental decision and already thought through those things and then have the physical preparation as well. So listen, pick one of our dates. The earliest one is September, first week of September. Listen, the governor of Nevada is, you know, regardless of whether or not he lifts the restrictions, Front Sight is opening September 1st. And so we're going to have a class 2 days later. Join us. Come to that class. I'll teach you on the Constitution and the Second Amendment as well. But you will learn how to be prepared in the moment should this chaos come to your back door or to your front door in your community. You need to be ready and able to defend yourself. And even if all of this chaos goes away tomorrow, 1.2 million violent crimes in America every single year long before all of this. You got to be ready. You got to be able. I hope it never happens to you, but it's time for you to think like a sheepdog and stop thinking like a sheep. We'll see you at Front Sight in the fall. Thank you. Look, I know you guys get this, but the real pandemic, the most dangerous threat to our health, to our safety, to our loved ones, whether they're in a nursing home or in the womb, the real pandemic is not a virus. The most dangerous pandemic, in fact, is not even these petty tyrants and drunk-on-power politicians across the nation. No, in fact, I hate to say it, friends, but the COVID crackdowns, the unconstitutional orders that have spread across this nation would not have happened if it wasn't for the real problem that has been festering underneath the surface for decades. You see, just as a virus needs a weakened immune system to prey upon, in the same way, bad government and petty tyrants need a weakened society upon which to prey. A society lacking in values and principles and truth. That's the environment where their promises of government saving everybody's lives, and their lies that you are not capable of calculating the risks and making your own decisions. See, that's the environment. That's the petri dish, if you will, where bad government and tyranny spreads. And so the truth of the matter is, whether we like it or not, we've got to look at ourselves. That stuff wouldn't have happened if we didn't have such civic ignorance about our history and our Constitution, if we hadn't lost this love and passion for liberty, this faith in free enterprise and faith in individualism. If we hadn't lost those things, none of this would have happened. And so as we look out there across the nation and we realize those things are happening, it's up to us to turn this thing around. It's up to us to give an immune boost of constitutionalism, of truth, of bringing back the principles of liberty. And so the good news is, just as you can fight off and defeat a virus with the right immune boosters, kind of like getting some good vitamin D right here in our Texas sun today, just as you can do that with a virus, you can do the same thing with bad government. We need an immune booster of civic literacy in America. Just as civic ignorance got us into this mess, civic literacy can cure that. So if we'll begin to love liberty again, if we'll begin to study liberty again, study the Constitution, begin to know our rights, we can not only stop this nonsense that's happening, we can prevent it from happening again. John Jay put it this way. He was our first Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. He's, one of the guys who gave us the Federalist Papers, our instruction manual on the Constitution. He's a signer of the Constitution. But Jay said that every citizen should read and study the Constitution. Why? So that they can teach the rising generation to be free, so that they will know their rights, perceive when their rights have been violated, and then defend and assert their rights. We got to know our rights before we can defend and assert those rights. We need to follow John Jay's advice. I love when Shelley Luther stood up and asserted her rights, that people rallied from all over in peaceful protest to help her defend those rights. The good legal counsel like Warren, who you're going to hear from, and Briscoe and these others came alongside her, and as a result, Texas Supreme Court set her free and forced Emperor Abbott's hand, forced him to begin to lift these unconstitutional, tyrannical orders that have even happened in Texas. Can you believe this? In Texas, we've been dealing with this stuff. But it begins with knowing your rights. Thomas Paine, September 12th, 1777. We had lost battle after battle after battle. Most people had given up on the American cause. And he said, those who want to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigues of supporting it. In other words, like men, like adults, we got to grow up, we got to step up. We got to be willing to undergo the fatigues of supporting that liberty. That means studying. So here's my challenge for you. I'm going to beg every one of you here to become students of freedom. To just give a couple hours a week to start studying the document, to start diving in to know your rights, and then spread the good news. Teach your friends, your family, the people at your church. We've got to fall in love with freedom again. We got to study how we got it. We got to study how to preserve and protect it. And most importantly, we got to make sure we pass it intact to the next generation. That's what I'm going to challenge you to do. We make it fun and easy. Write this down, text it to all your friends. Constitutioncoach.com. Constitutioncoach.com. You got a coach for your finances. You got a coach for your health and your wellness and all that good stuff. We need a freedom coach right now. We need to be teaching people about freedom. We'll teach you the Constitution from the very room. I teach it in Independence Hall, where it was all done, where it was framed. But then, after you learn it, I'm asking you to sign up as a Constitution host for free and use this class to teach your friends and family in your living room, in your church, out here in the park. I don't care where you go. Just make sure that you're like Paul Revere. You're sounding the warning and you're getting your friends and family involved as well. You've got to become a force multiplier of freedom. You've got to be the patriot of today. Last thing I'll say is, as Michelle said, this is Memorial Day weekend, and on Monday we're going to honor all of those 1.2 million that paid the ultimate sacrifice for us, that died so that we could be free. Abraham Lincoln said in his Gettysburg Address that it's from these honored dead that we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. What is the cause for which they died? American exceptionalism, not American fear, not American cowering. What is the cause for which they died? Liberty and freedom. You see, friends, just like tough times reveal our character, crisis reveals the character of a nation. And the crisis of 2020 has unfortunately revealed America not to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, but the land of the easily imprisoned, home of the timid and afraid. We can change that. We can turn that around. We can bring back a love of liberty by having an increased devotion to the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. Make your devotion increase today. Let this rally spur you on to become a student of freedom, and let's make sure we're passing that torch of freedom intact to the next generation. God bless you guys. Thank you.